You know, in real estate, the big rule is always exposure, exposure, exposure. You got to get your home in front of as many buyers as possible to get the absolute highest price. But what if that whole idea is wrong? What if the best way to get the most for your home is actually to sell it in secret? So here's what we're going to cover. We'll start with what everybody thinks they know about selling a house. Then we'll dive into this one wild study that flips everything on its head. We'll get into the data, see how it stacks up against the rest of the industry, and then we'll figure out what it all means.
Okay, let's kick things off with what pretty much everyone in real estate takes as gospel. This is the common wisdom, the advice that's been passed down to sellers for, well, forever. I mean, it just sounds completely backwards, doesn't it? The best strategy for your biggest asset is to, what, whisper about it? Keep it on the down low? Let's dig in and see if this crazy idea can actually make you more money.
First things first, let's make sure we're all on the same page. We're talking about something called a pocket listing. Now, this isn't just any old quiet sale. This is a property that an agent deliberately keeps off the multiple listing service, the MLS, the main database for pretty much all homes for sale. Instead, they sell it directly through their own private network of clients.
And for years, the thinking on this has been crystal clear. If you want top dollar, you need a bidding war. And to get a bidding war, you need as many eyeballs on your property as humanly possible. So, keeping your home off the MLS, that has always been seen as a guaranteed way to leave a pile of cash on the table.
But what if all of that is wrong? Well, that brings us right to our next section and a really surprising study out of Dallas, Texas that basically throws a giant wrench into that entire belief system.
This is where Dr. Darren Hayunga comes in. He's a real estate professor, and he decided to take a really close look at the Dallas-Fort Worth market. It's a massive market, lots of sales, to see what the data actually said about these so-called secret sales.
And what he found was pretty stunning. His research showed that, on average, pocket listings in the Dallas area didn't sell for less money at all. They actually sold for 1.7% more than similar homes on the open market.
This result was so wild, it even caught the researcher himself off guard. Dr. Hayunga basically said, look, I know what the theory says should happen, that these secret sales should get a lower price, but the hard numbers he found, they told a completely different story.
Now, a claim that bold, it needs some serious backup. So how in the world did he come to that conclusion? Let's get into the nitty-gritty of the research. Okay, this was an incredibly detailed process. First, he defined these pocket sales as zero-day listings, which means they only hit the official MLS database after a deal was already done. Then, for every single one of those sales, he found a nearly identical twin that sold on the open market. And I mean identical. He controlled for over 50 different variables. We're talking pools, construction materials, HOA fees, you name it. All of this was inside a massive data set of over 700,000 transactions.
And here's why that's so important. By being so incredibly meticulous, his study was able to make a true apples-to-apples comparison. Dr. Hayunga's argument is that a lot of other studies just don't go into that level of detail, which makes his findings uniquely precise.
So we have this one, super detailed study that shows a premium for selling in secret. But how does that fit into the wider real estate world? It's time to zoom out and look at the bigger picture.
So in May of 2020, the National Association of Realtors, the NAR, rolled out a huge new rule. It's called the Clear Cooperation Policy, and it basically said that agents have to put a home on the MLS within 1 business day of marketing it publicly. This rule was aimed squarely at the whole practice of pocket listings.
And the impact? It was immediate and dramatic. If you look at Dr. Hayunga's data, before this rule change, that pocket listing premium was a really healthy 3.3%. But after the rule kicked in, it dropped all the way down to just 0.9%, basically a statistical wash. The thinking is that 24-hour window just isn't enough time to find that special buyer who's willing to pay a premium.
But there's another fascinating wrinkle here. The rules of the game often seem to be different for the super wealthy. So what happens if we only look at the really high-end luxury properties?
Well, the premium just explodes. Luxury homes sold as pocket listings actually fetched a massive 8.2% higher price. The study suggests that for these high-end homes, selling off-market kind of signals exclusivity. It creates this sense of scarcity that actually drives the price way, way up.
Now, as compelling as this Dallas study is, you have to see it in context, because it is very much the odd one out. A study by Bright MLS found an 18% loss for off-market sales. A Zillow report found a loss of nearly $5,000 on a national level, and a report from San Francisco,
a staggering 18.6% loss. And this right here is the core of the whole debate.
So, because of all those other studies, the industry has some pushback on the Dallas findings. Critics say, hey, it's an outlier from just one city. They also point out that the number of pocket sales in the study was pretty small, only about 1% of the total. And they'll note the paper hasn't gone through the full academic peer review process just yet.
So you've got all this conflicting information, a huge premium in one corner, big losses in the other. What is a home seller supposed to make of all this? Let's try to land this plane and get to the final takeaway.
It really comes down to two completely different ways of thinking about it. On one hand, you've got the tried and true open market, get maximum visibility, hope for a bidding war, and hey, it's backed by most of the national data. But on the other hand, you have the pocket listing, a possible premium in certain markets like Dallas, a really powerful tool for luxury sellers, and of course, the huge benefit of privacy.
So the most important thing to realize here isn't about which study is right or wrong. It's that the idea of one single best way to sell a home, it's just a myth. The right strategy clearly depends on where you live, what your price point is, and what you're trying to achieve as a seller.
And that leaves us with one final thought to chew on. This one study, from Dallas, even if it is an outlier, it forces us to question a rule we've taken for granted for decades. Is the wide open market, with all its chaos and exposure, really the best market for every single home? The data seems to be telling us that the answer is a whole lot more complicated than we ever thought.